Hello everyone, I am Archana Rani. In this video lecture, we are going to discuss origin of defect in software testing. This is one of the topic of the defect management in software testing. These are the points that I am going to cover in this lecture. What is a defect? What are the common types of defect? What are the methods we can use it for preventing a defect? From where the defect may be occur, what are the reasons for origins of the defect. It's classified into three category, that is what are the sources, what is the impact of software artifact, what is the impact of user view on the origin of defect, what are the factors for the origin of defect, what is the classification of origin of defect, what is defect recovery, and the software defect elimination strategies. Let's we start to discuss what is defect. When this word come defect, that means generally in our routine life also so many times we use this word. Mostly when we use this word, when the system is not working properly, or the system may have some flaws or failures, or the errors may occur in the system, or as per our expectations the product will not give the output. That time we use this word, that is the system may be the defective. That means in a software also similar terminology we use it, that called as the defect in testing also. While we implement the testing, that time we can use this. So when we test the software, that time the software bugs may be arise, and when that bugs may arrive, when we are checking the output of the system, and while checking the output, the expected output is not matched with the actual output, that time we may call the defect may have in a system. It also refer the error, flaws, failures, or the fault in a computer program, as I said it previously. Most of the bugs are arrive from the mistakes and the error that is made by either the developer or made by the architect, and that is identified by the tester. Then that bugs or the errors may call as the defect in a system. What are the common types of defect? Mostly the defect types may be the arithmetic defect, logical defect, syntax defect, multi-threading defect, interface defect, or the performance defect. What are the methods we can use it for preventing the defect? For preventing the defect, whatever programming technique we are adopting, that programming technique should be as up to date. That means whatever logic we have implemented, we should have a confidence on that, that the technique, whatever technique we implemented, that technique is not going to generate any error. That is what help to prevent the defect in a system. Software development methodology, whatever methodology we have studied, as per your software or the product, you have to choose it the appropriate methodology for your project or the software. Or regularly you should review your product, or whatever program you have written or code you have written, that code should be analyzed properly. These are the methods that help to prevent the defect in a system. Let's we start to discuss the origin of the defect. For origin of the defect is nothing but from where the defect may be occur. So mostly the defect may have the negative effect on a software user. How that negative effect is on a software user? As I said it previously, that the expected output is not matched with the actual output, and the software engineers, whatever software engineers is work very hard, it produce the high quality software with a number of defect. That is the aim of the software engineer. But still, if defect is occur, then what are the reasons of that defect? That should be identified it. That is the origin of the defect. For origin of defect, as I said it, that it is classified into the three category. What are that three category? It classified into the defect source, or what are that defect source? We are going to discuss this in details. What is the impact of the software artifact, or the impact of the user views on the defect? Let's we discuss one by one. For discussing more details about the classification of the origin of defect, first, how to identify the origin. For identifying the origin of the defect in a system, we have to develop the hypothesis for the defect. How to develop the hypothesis? For that, you have to write it the test cases for the design hypothesis. Now how to design the test cases? So if for each and every situation in a hypothesis, whatever you are consider, you have to design the test case for it. Then you have to design the procedure for it, assemble the test set for it, and then by putting the appropriate testing level, implement the testing level or the suitable test on it. You have to evaluate that test cases. That is the hypothesis, that it help to identify the origin of the defect in the system. Let's we start to discuss the first classification of the origin of defect, that is defect source. From where that defect may be occur, may have the different reasons. That the software engineers may be the lacking in the education, that the software engineers is not having the enough background knowledge about the defect or the about the softwares, whatever software articraft we have considered or the procedures we have implemented, that engineers may not aware about it in details, or the poor communication between the colleagues or the teams, that might be the reasons. Or the engineers may be omitted something, that the as per the requirements the engineers may be forgotten to consider that it, or the engineers may knowing it, but by mistakenly it is not considered it, that is the transactions. Or immature process may be the reasons, that the engineers may be misdirected to the team members, that are the defect source to generate the defect in a softwares. Whereas the second classification is the impact of the software articraft. For impact of the software articraft, the how that software is not work properly, or what is the impact of it. The errors may be occur in your system, or fault may be generated, or you may get it the failure in a systems. Errors is occurring in a system means what? That the defect of the user range from the minor inconvenience to rendering the software unfit to the use. That means your expected output is not matched with your actual output. That is what you can easily understand, that the system is not work properly. That is the error. Whereas fault is discovered by the defect the in a while checking or testing the software operations or the functionality, that comes under the fault. Whereas the failure is whatever result is generated from the test cases, that test cases result is analyzed and determine the softwares behave correctly or not. That is the impact of the software articraft. Whereas the next category is the impact of the user view. For impact of the user view, it is totally depend on the requirements, whatever requirements of the users, that is fulfilling or not. That is the poor quality software, the quality of the system we have considered for the business, that we have not fulfilled the requirement. Because of the not fulfilling the requirement, it might be get the defect. And what are the reasons that we are not developing the quality program, or we are not implemented the quality program, or the business risk? Maybe the reasons are the lacking of the domain knowledge, or lacking of the technology knowledge, on unrealistic schedules, or badly engineered software, or the poor acquisition practices we are following it. That might be the reasons for that we have not the team members are not developed the quality software. Whereas the user is not satisfied because of, as I said it, that lacking of the specification or the requirement, or the users are reluctant to give away the information. Sometimes the user may not give it the appropriate requirement. That is one of the reason. Or the developer do not pay the attention on the user request, or the vocabulary are not clear. Sometimes the user may telling something and the team members may understand the something else. Likewise, or the requirement engineer do not possess enough capability to get the desired information. These are the reasons that that as per the user's view, the defect may be occur in a system. This is all about the origins of the defect. Let's we discuss what is the factors, origin of the factor for the identifying the defect in a software. The reasons may be error in the requirement, as we have just discussed in a classification of the origin of defect, or error in a design, or maybe the error in a source code, or in a user documentations, or the bad fixes, or errors may be in a data collections or the tables, or whatever test cases is written by the tester may have the defect in it only. That are the factors, may be reasons for the origin of the defect. Let's we discuss about the classification of the defect. For classification of defect is classified into the two category. First is fault model and second is defect repository. Fault model, let's we discuss the more details about fault model. Fault model is nothing but the defect model, and it is describe the link between the error, whereas the fault or the defect may be occur in a system that can be created, that is called as the fault model. Whereas the defect repository, whatever defect is occur in a system, that defect can be stored it at one place, which can be all the other people can easily access that from a centralized location. That means we are storing all the defect. We can create one defect database or the defect repository at one place that can be easily accessed by the everybody for all the project. That is called as the defect repository. This is about the classification of the defect. Whereas the defect discovery is discovered by the developer as well as the tester before we release the product. Similarly, defects are discovered by the customers or the users before we release the product, or the defect is discovered after release, but this can be very embarrassing for the development team if the defect is discovered after release the product. This is about the defect discovery. Whereas what is the software defect elimination strategy? For that we are implementing the 6 steps. That is the effective defect prevention. We should take it very effective prevention. For that the defect should not be occur in a system, or if the defect is occur, it should be caught before release the software. High level of the defect removal efficiency, as I said it, that before release we should have a proper review of it and it should remove effectively. Accurate defect predictions before the product begins. Accurate defect tracking during the development process. Very useful quality measurement, we should implement it and ensure the high level of the user satisfaction that the defect should be eliminated before release it. This is all about the software defect elimination strategies, where the details about the origins of the defect and the what is defect and all. Thank you.